those days, television had huge audiences, and there were really only the two networks, so it was a really big deal. And my job was simply to be the person who would sit there at 6 o'clock at night before the news and say to people what was happening. We would voice promos. We would read the midday news and the late news when the audiences were fairly small and they felt that they didn't need the protection of a Dougal Stevenson or a Bill McCarthy sitting on screen. So all those little odd broadcasting jobs, announcing jobs around the day-to-day functions of the network. It was really exciting because television then was still, you know, the big thing. And so to be able to be at the heart of that, to get to meet the people who were making the programs or who were in the programs, certainly in those days, it was a really glamorous, exciting world to be in. You know, it was kind of like, oh, I'd like to get into that, and, you know, there's lots happening there. That's not a boring life, and it wasn't. It was great. And I got involved in light entertainment shows and all sorts of little programs that we would make, and it was a really a great job filled with lots of variety. And then you were always, of course, hanging out for the day when you hoped that maybe you'd get your own series or your own show or something. So it was stupendous. I'd started off as a radio announcer, and essentially I'd become a television announcer. So it was just a step along the career path. Because I was one of the group of on-screen presenters that was regularly used, I would work in different telethons, worked on them in Christchurch, worked on them in Wellington, Palmerston North. And yeah, I mean, again, you just don't see that kind of live extravaganza, crazy really. But it was at a time when television was very dominant. Just one network really was very, very dominant. And today there are so many different things for you to watch and do. It just doesn't work in the same way. But then the country would stop. It would be a great cause. It was a bit like a sort of, you felt a little bit like that feeling you have when you're looking at the America's Cup. You know, everyone kind of watches it and can talk about it and take part in it. And it was community-based television in a sense, but decorated with some of the big names that we would bring out from shows that we were buying from overseas. Well, I remember when the first telethon was coming along, I wasn't sure how I would do that, so the previous weekend I practiced by staying up from Saturday night through to Sunday evening just to see how it felt. And no, well, yeah, I think it wasn't that hard. There's lots of things happening. There were fresh people coming in all the time, and then there was that feeling of part of the fun of watching the program was just watching these people who would stay up for 24 hours, and things would get crazier and crazier. People would get very relaxed, very human, and you just did it. I know, and you knew there was going to be a neat party afterwards. And you know, when you're in your 20s and early 30s, that thought alone is probably enough to propel you forward. I had just bought a tiny 10-acre block out the back of Wellington, so obviously I was feeling in touch with the rural world. And it was a series of semi-finals, which I would travel to right around the country, and it would culminate in a telecast. So our very first attempt to do that was at Trillo's in Auckland, which was a big venue that was occasionally used for special telecasts. And that was the first show. It was televised, went down really well, you know. It just opened up a new audience and opened up what had been a radio show to a television audience. And because it succeeded and it rated well, I was then involved with it for many, many years. It was sensational. What a privilege to learn so much about this place and about the rural community, that they weren't just you know, a group of sort of country yokels as they're sometimes seen from the perspective of the city, that these were smart, young business people carving out a business in a rural environment, great skill sets. You know, university degrees were just about de rigueur for the top echelon of the young farmers, and smart people, great show, and a wonderful opportunity. It was a lot of fun, travelled around the country, got to wear some very strange clothes on the odd occasion. That was the only danger of being in a fashion show, was that someone would try to, you know, dress you up in a bit of fashion. That could be entertaining, but yeah, that's how I got involved with those. And again, you know, just that whole team thing. live television, which is really rare today. Everything tends to be pre-recorded for safety because they want to maximize every moment, lots of editing. But then it was very complicated. It was much easier to do a live show. You would have 4 or 5 cameras, a great big crew, probably 20, 30 people working on the scene for you. You would rehearse it for a couple of days beforehand, and bang, you go live to air. And that was exciting, you know, because any mistake would be there forever. And that kept you on your toes. Well, This Is New Zealand was a really interesting one. And that was actually a cable show that I did for the States. And Kathy Strong was my co-presenter. And it was a great idea. I mean, it was an entrepreneurial idea by an organisation in New Zealand that could see the rise of cable, see how it was relatively inexpensive to get on cable in the States. They were looking for product, and it could be sold to New Zealand advertisers that were in the tourism area that wanted to bring in customers from a very important market. So we broadcast that for a number of years. It was a weekly show in the States. I even remember being in Los Angeles actually once and getting stopped by some people who said, "Hey, you're not the guy on that This Is New Zealand show, are you?" Which, you know, I didn't ever expect to happen. That was kind of funny. So I said, "Well, yes, I am." And they said, "We just love that show, and we've decided that we're going to sell in America and move to Picton." And they'd seen an episode on Picton and the Marlborough Sounds, and they just thought that's paradise, you know. So we knew it was working. So it was a lot of fun, and we recorded a lot of the shows actually in Melbourne. So we started recording them in studios in New Zealand, but got a very good deal from an Australian company. And the producers of This Is New Zealand decided to use the Melbourne studios. So I got to know Melbourne as well, so I couldn't complain about that, and got paid for it. I can remember the very first show was a real gamble because we had an equestrian success at the Olympics, but at that point we didn't know that Mark was going to get his gold medals. But I went to the head of production and I said, "You know, if this bloke gets a gold medal for equestrian sport, the whole country's watching him. It's a great moment in our history in sporting terms. We've never done it before. What say I make of this as your life program?" Well, it was long odds that we would get the gold medal. So this guy said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, if he gets a gold medal, then you know, we'll make a This Is Your Life about him." So I set about researching it anyway, and we had no contract or anything in place. But that day that Mark got the gold medals in equestrian was a huge day for me. I remember jumping around in the lounge. I couldn't believe it. I got on the phone immediately, started tracking down people for the show, and rang up the producer and said, "Well, you said I can do this." And he said, "Yeah, let's give it a go." So I did. I think I ran up a budget of a couple of $100,000, which was a fortune, getting everything together, getting people flying around the world, and setting up the surprise for the program. And if it hadn't have been a success, I think I would have still been paying all of that off. But it was. The show rated. It was massive. It was timely, and it launched This Is Your Life in New Zealand, and it really launched a new phase for my career, because by this time I was an independent. I was my own business, and it was a tremendous break for me. I remember getting a phone call from someone and saying, "Look, we've just got this little part in this movie. Would you like to do it?" I had the time. It seemed to be in the right direction, so I turned up for an extra kind of dancing man. I think the character didn't even have a name. I think he was just called Dancing Man or something. That was a lot of fun. I was lucky enough to be able to meet some of the most extraordinary people that I'd heard about growing up as a child, travel to the most far-flung and exotic corners of the stunning country that I just love, and I feel that was the thing that I would take away from that, probably about 20 years of my life. Meeting some fascinating people, meeting personal challenges, learning a new skill set, and understanding a lot more about what my country was really about, and the diversity and beauty and fragility of this place. So I'm just so grateful for all of that. And I think all of those things added to the rest of my life's journey in a positive way.